We don't treat animals here. This is a civilian hospital. Get that dog out. The canine barked violently, snapping at the air, limping, defensive, refusing to let anyone close. The old man in the wheelchair pleaded. He's trained. He's injured. Please. Then the rookie nurse stepped forward. Ava. She knelt anyway, slow, steady, placed her hand on the dog's neck and whispered something no one could hear. The barking stopped. The canine leaned into her touch. Ava examined the leg. Treated the injury right there on the ER floor. Security was called. The hospital director arrived furious. You violated protocol, he said. You're fired. Ava wheeled the old man and his dog outside herself. That's when the engines hit the driveway. For black Navy SUVs rolled in fast, and the men stepping out weren't asking for the nurse. They were asking who had touched their dog. Before we begin, take a second to comment where you're watching from and subscribe. We don't treat animals here. The doctor's voice didn't rise, didn't waver, it didn't have to. Each word landed with surgical precision, slicing through the controlled chaos of the emergency room like a scalpel through skin. He stood rigid just inside the trauma bay entrance, arms crossed over his pristine white coat, his stare fixed on the German Shepherd as though someone had wheeled in a biohazard. This is a civilian hospital, he added, the words clipped and final. Remove that dog now. The canine answered with a bark that rattled through the corridor. Not desperate, not fearful, defiant. The shepherd's hind leg dragged as it repositioned itself, nails clicking sharp against the polished linoleum. No visible blood, no protruding bone, just a telltale limp that spoke of something damaged deep beneath muscle and fur, and a battle-ready stance that dared anyone to come closer. In the wheelchair, the old man's knuckles went white against the armrests. He seemed to shrink into himself, his narrow shoulders hunched beneath a faded jacket, thin white hair barely visible against the black vinyl headrest. When he leaned forward, his hands trembled. He's trained, the man said. The words came steady, but exhaustion weighted every syllable. He won't hurt anyone. He's injured. Please. The air went still. A nurse shot a nervous glance at the doctor, then toward security, hovering near the wall. Another nurse took an involuntary step backward when the dog barked again, this time loud enough to echo off the ceiling tiles. The ER was already drowning. Monitors shrilling, phones ringing off the hook, gurneys blocking the hallway. But suddenly, the space around that wheelchair became a void nobody wanted to fill. Liability thickened the air more than the sharp bite of disinfectant. That animal poses a threat, the doctor snapped, his voice hardening. If it attacks someone in this facility, we are liable. Get it out of here. The shepherd adjusted its stance, planting itself like a barricade between the wheelchair and every white coat in sight. Ears pinned flat, lips peeled back just enough to show teeth. A promise not yet delivered. And there, half concealed behind a medication cart near the far wall, the rookie nurse stood watching. Ava powder blue scrubs. Blonde hair scraped back into a severe ponytail. Eyes the color of winter ice. Sharp and assessing. Her hospital badge still had that fresh from lamination shine. Corners barely touched by wear. To most people in that room, she was furniture. Quiet, cautious, the kind of person you talk over without realizing she's there. She didn't rush forward, didn't open her mouth. She simply observed the way the dog pulled air into its lungs. 1 breath. 2. 3. She catalogued the favored leg. The growl that rose and fell in sync with each exhale. The way the canine's eyes didn't track the doctors or nurses. Only the man in the chair, checking, guarding, protecting. Someone shouldered past Ava, muttering under their breath. Don't get involved. Security's handling it. The dog's bark cracked through the room again, sharper now. The old man's voice broke. He served this country, he said to no one in particular. He's not just some enough. The doctor cut him off. Sir, you need to leave this facility immediately. Ava moved. Not a lunge, not a dramatic entrance. She simply stepped out from behind the cart and into the open floor space. Like she'd already calculated every variable and reached her conclusion. Nobody stopped her because nobody expected her to be worth stopping. She dropped to one knee. Slow, deliberate. Right there on the cold emergency room floor, every head swiveled. Hey, Ava said, her voice barely above a whisper, not directed at the man, not at the clustering staff, but at the shepherd. The tone sat low and even, threaded beneath the ambient noise. Easy now. The canine snapped its jaws once in her direction, teeth flashing white. A security guard's hand moved toward his belt. Ava didn't even blink. She kept her hands visible, resting open on her thighs, palms up. Her body angled slightly to the side, making herself smaller, less confrontational. Her gaze stayed level with the dog's eyes, but never locked, never challenged. Easy, she repeated. Softer this time. I see you. The barking stuttered, caught. Not silenced, just confused. Ava shifted forward another half-inch. You're doing your job, she murmured. I understand. The growl lost its edge around them. People held their breath without knowing they were doing it. Then Ava's hand made contact with the shepherd's neck, confident, practiced like she'd crossed this bridge 1,000 times before. The canine went rigid. And then, against all logic, it pressed into her palm. The barking died. A shocked silence crashed through the ER like a tidal wave. Ava's fingers worked through the dense fur with certainty. Each movement controlled and sure. She spoke again, too quiet for anyone beyond arm's reach to hear, and the dog's frame loosened beneath her touch. She examined the injured leg with clinical efficiency, palpated the joint, tested range of motion. Every gesture was economical, stripped of hesitation or wasted energy. Not fractured, she announced, her voice level. Probable ligament strain, painful, absolutely, but manageable with proper treatment. The doctor took a step forward. Nurse, he said, authority sharpening the word. You don't have authorization to. I've got him, Ava said without looking up. The shepherd didn't flinch when she gently manipulated the leg into a better position. Didn't bare teeth when she checked for inflammation. The dog stayed locked on her face, alert and watchful, but yielding. That yielding became the problem. Security materialized moments later, radios crackling static, their attention ping-ponging between the calm dog and Ava's steady hands. The hospital director arrived on their heels. He absorbed the tableau in a single sweep. The kneeling nurse, the docksale canine, the frozen staff, the wheelchair-bound man gripping his armrests like they were the only thing keeping him upright. Someone want to explain this? The director demanded. She violated established protocol, the doctor said immediately. Made physical contact with an aggressive animal without clearance. The director's focus zeroed in on Ava. True. Ava looked up for the first time since kneeling. Her expression was clear, unrepentant. Yes, sir. You endangered this hospital, the director said, voice tight. You disregarded direct instructions from a senior physician. I assessed and treated an injury, Ava replied, her tone unchanged. That determination wasn't yours to make. Ava withdrew her hand with deliberate slowness. The shepherd held position. Quiet now, breathing steady. The director released a long breath through his nose. You're finished here, he said flatly. Clear out your locker. Consider yourself terminated. A ripple of disbelief spread through the watching crowd. Someone whispered her name like a question. A nurse near the supply closet stared hard at her shoes. Ava gave a single nod. No protest, no justification. She rose, wiped her palms against her scrub pants, and turned. Toward the wheelchair. Come on, she said gently to the old man. Let's go. He stared up at her, eyes gleaming wet, bewildered. You didn't have to do that. Yeah, Ava said, already releasing the wheel locks. I did. She guided the wheelchair toward the exit herself, one hand on each handle. The shepherd fell into step beside her, still limping, but calm now, glancing back once at the room full of people who'd underestimated them both. The automatic doors whispered open. Outside, the night air hit cool and quiet. Too quiet. Ava stopped just past the covered entrance, hands still gripping the wheelchair. For a handful of seconds, she allowed herself to simply breathe. Behind them, the ER's rhythm resumed, but something fundamental had shifted in that space. People avoided the director's sightline. The doctor stood unnaturally still, his jaw working. And then the pavement began to vibrate. Not sirens this time. Engines deep, powerful, getting closer. Ava felt the tremor through her shoe soles before the sound fully registered. And she knew with an instinct that straightened her spine that the night had only just begun. The sound didn't announce itself loudly. It infiltrated the darkness like a shift in air pressure. A therming that made the glass entrance doors vibrate and the metal awning overhead shudder. Ava registered it through the wheelchair handles before her ears fully processed it. The shepherd noticed too. His head snapped up, ears swiveling forward, his entire body going motionless, not with fear, but with instant recognition. The old man frowned into the darkness. What is that? Ava stayed silent, her attention fixed on the empty driveway. Inside the ER, someone near the triage desk glanced up from their paperwork. Anyone else hearing that? The director turned toward the glass, irritation already creasing his features. Probably some late delivery, he muttered dismissively. Everyone back to work, but the vibration intensified instead of fading. It multiplied. Headlights swept across the asphalt. Harsh white beams cutting geometric patterns through the night. Not frantic, not random, coordinated, purposeful. One vehicle glided into view, followed by a second, then two more. Black SUVs identical down to the tinted windows, their spacing precise, engines rumbling with restrained force. Every conversation inside the ER died mid-word. Security personnel automatically straightened their posture. One guard reached for his radio. Another started toward the entrance, then froze, uncertain why his heartbeat had accelerated. Outside, Ava felt the shepherd move closer to her leg. Not barking, not retreating, anchoring himself. The lead SUV's door swung open. A man emerged who commanded attention without speaking. Tall, powerfully built, his bearing military perfect, even in civilian clothing. His hair showed silver at the temples, cropped short and precise. The way his eyes scanned the surroundings wasn't panicked. It was tactical, methodical, as though he'd already mapped every potential scenario 3 moves ahead. Behind him, the other doors opened in sequence. More men exited, not hurried, not casual. Each one moved with quiet synchronization, eyes tracking entry points, exit routes, angles of approach, no visible uniforms, no exposed weapons, but there was zero ambiguity about what they represented. The director swallowed hard. Inside, someone breathed. Who the hell are they? The answer came without words needing to be spoken. The shepherd sat instantly, perfectly. The old man's breathing changed, his shoulders pulled back, spine straightening against the wheelchair like decades-old muscle memory had suddenly reactivated. He didn't smile, didn't gesture, he nodded once. The man from the lead vehicle returned the acknowledgement with something that transcended mere courtesy. Respect, hard-earned and absolute. The director pushed through the automatic doors, manufacturing a professional smile that failed to reach his eyes. "Good evening," he said, tension tightening his voice. "How can we assist you?" The man's gaze moved past him without pause. "The nurse. Where is she?" The director blinked rapidly. "I'm sorry." "The nurse who treated the K9, the man said, his tone calm, but carrying an undertone that suggested he didn't repeat himself. A hush descended over the small crowd that had accumulated just inside the entrance. Every instinct in that space screamed that this question had exactly one acceptable answer. The director cleared his throat. "She broke hospital protocol." He managed. "Her employment has been terminated." The man's attention snapped back to him with laser focus. "Has it?" The temperature seemed to plummet 10 degrees. Before the director could formulate a response, Ava stepped forward, one hand still resting lightly on the wheelchair. "I'm right here." The man turned. Something flickered across his expression for the briefest moment. Not shock, not irritation, recognition. "Ava," he said quietly. Her jaw tensed for a fraction of a second before her expression smoothed. "Sir." The director's eyes darted between them. "You two are acquainted." The man ignored the question entirely. He moved closer to Ava, his presence filling space without aggression. "You made contact with the dog," he stated. "Yes, sir." "And he permitted it?" "Yes, sir." The man nodded once, as though confirming intelligence he'd already received. Then he crouched just enough to properly assess the K9. He extended one hand, palm facing down. The shepherd sniffed deliberately, then pressed his forehead firmly against the man's knuckles. A murmur of astonishment rippled through the onlookers. "That's not a pet," someone whispered urgently. The man straightened and refocused on Ava. "Your assessment." "Ligament strain in the left hind," Ava replied without hesitation. "He'll require rest and anti-inflammatory medication. Surgery won't be necessary." The man's eyes sharpened. "You're certain completely?" He studied her face for several long seconds, then nodded. Figured as much. The director found his voice again, though it came out weaker. "Sir, with all due respect, this remains a hospital administrative matter. Regardless of who you..." The man finally looked directly at him. "Rear Admiral Thomas Hale," he said evenly. "United States Navy." The silence that followed was absolute. The director's mouth opened, closed, opened again without producing sound. "Admiral," he finally stammered. "I had no idea." "You weren't supposed to," Hale replied. Until this moment. He gestured subtly toward the man in the wheelchair. Do you know his identity? The director glanced at the old man, then back at Hale. Confusion evident. Ah, patient. The old man released a dry, humorless laugh. Naturally, Hale's voice remained calm, but steel reinforced every word. Now, that man commanded a SEAL task unit during Gulf operations. He sacrificed the use of both legs, extracting 2 of my officers from a collapsing structure while under enemy fire. The director's face drained of color and the canine your facility refused to treat. Hale continued. Maintains active duty status. Military working dog. Multiple combinations. The director looked like his knees might give out. I wasn't informed, he said weakly. Hale's expression hardened. Precisely the issue. Ava stood motionless beside the wheelchair, hands clasped now, posture neutral. She didn't look at the director, didn't acknowledge the staff watching through the glass barrier. She watched the dog. Hale followed her line of sight. He responded to you, he observed. That doesn't occur without reason. Ava shrugged slightly. He was hurting. That's not what I'm referring to. The director grasped for some fragment of authority. Even so, he insisted. She violated established protocol. She acted without proper authorization. I had no alternative. Hale closed the distance between them near enough that the director had to tilt his head back to maintain eye contact. You had alternatives, he said quietly. You chose bureaucracy over judgment. He turned back to Ava. Why did you intervene? Ava didn't pause. Because he needed help. That's the only reason. She nodded. It's reason enough. Hale studied her again longer this time, more thoroughly. You didn't identify yourself? No, sir. Didn't offer explanation. No, sir. Accepted termination without argument. Ava's lips curved into the ghost of a smile. Wouldn't be the first time. Hale released a slow breath through his nose, something resembling suppressed amusement. Still haven't changed. The director stiffened. Admiral, if you're suggesting we reinstate. Hale raised one hand, instantly silencing him. We are well past that discussion. He turned toward the ER entrance. I want that canine treated appropriately immediately. I want a comprehensive report on why staff initially refused care. And I want this nurse, he indicated Ava with a subtle nod. Left completely alone. A beat of silence. Correction. Hale amended. I want her treated with respect. Nobody dared argue. As hospital staff scrambled to comply, Hale remained with Ava. You disappear too effectively, he said under his breath. She kept her gaze forward. That was intentional. I'm aware. The old man in the wheelchair looked up at Ava, emotion thick in his weathered eyes. You never asked, he said softly. Never asked who I was. Ava shook her head. Didn't matter. The shepherd's tail thumped once against the concrete. Hale straightened, signaling to the men positioned behind him. They moved as one, establishing a quiet perimeter, not threatening, but unmistakably present. Inside, the hospital erupted into frantic activity. But the energy had fundamentally transformed. It wasn't chaos anymore. It was accountability. Hale glanced back at Ava one final time. You all right? Yes, sir. You certain? She met his eyes directly. Always am. He nodded. Well, talk soon. As the dog was carefully guided inside for proper treatment, Ava remained outside for a moment longer, the cool night air steadying her breathing. She could feel eyes on her from every direction, curious, fearful, odd. None of it mattered. What mattered was that the dog had stopped limping as much. What mattered was that the old man was smiling. And what mattered most was that the people who had dismissed them were now scrambling to understand what they'd nearly thrown away. The hospital didn't feel like a hospital anymore. By the time the dog was taken back for imaging, the ER had shifted into something tighter, quieter, like a room holding its breath. Word moved faster than any official announcement. Phones were out. Staff whispered in corners. Security stood straighter than usual, pretending they weren't aware of the men outside, who hadn't said a word, but somehow controlled the entire space. Ava washed her hands at the sink near Trauma 2, the water running longer than necessary. Blood swirled briefly down the drain, none of it hers, but her fingers still trembled just enough to notice. She flexed them once, twice, until the shaking stopped. That was when she felt it. Not a sound, not movement, a presence. You always did that, a voice said behind her, stayed quiet when everyone else panicked. Ava turned. Rear Admiral Hale stood a few feet back, hands clasped behind him, expression unreadable. In the harsh fluorescent light, the lines on his face looked deeper. Earned. You weren't supposed to be here, Ava said. Hale tilted his head. Neither were you. She dried her hand slowly. You shouldn't have come. And let you get buried under protocol, he replied. Again. Ava met his eyes. For a split second, the mask slipped. I left for a reason. So did I, Hale said didn't stick. Before she could respond, a commotion rippled down the hallway. A doctor rushed past, clipboard clutched tight. They're asking questions, he muttered to no one in particular. Real questions? Ava felt her jaw tighten. Who? Hale didn't answer right away. He glanced toward the glass doors at the end of the corridor where two men in dark suits had just stepped inside. No badges visible, but their posture said everything. People who don't like surprises, he said finally. The first man approached the nurse's station, flashing credentials too fast to read. The second scanned the room like he was. Counting exits. Conversations died around them. Federal, someone whispered. Ava exhaled slowly through her nose. It never takes long. Hale's voice dropped. They flagged the dog. Ava looked at him sharply. The K9, his handler, his deployment record. And Hale added, the nurse who touched him without hesitation. A beat. You, he finished. The suited man turned, eyes locking onto Ava with unnerving precision. He smiled, but it didn't soften anything. Nurse Ava Collins. Ava nodded. That's me. Would like a word. Hale stepped forward immediately. She's on my time. The man didn't flinch. With respect to Admiral, she's on ours. The hallway seemed to narrow. Ava raised a hand slightly. It's fine. Hale looked at her. You don't have to. I know, she said. But I will. They moved to an empty consultation room. The door closed with a soft click that felt louder than it should have. The second agent stood near the door, arms crossed. The first took the chair across from Ava, folding his hands neatly. You didn't identify the veteran, he said. No, Ava replied. You didn't identify the dog. No, you didn't identify yourself. Ava met his gaze. I was a nurse doing my job. The man studied her for a moment. You handled the animal like a military handler. I handled him like a patient, she said. He was limping. The agent's lips twitched. You used a calming sequence not taught in veterinary or civilian medical training. Ava didn't respond. Where did you learn it? Silence stretched. Hale's voice came through the door, muffled but firm. Careful. The agent smiled again. This time colder. You were declared inactive 8 years ago. He said classified unit medical designation. No discharge record. Ava's pulse thudded once. Hard. I left. You disappeared. I survived. The second agent shifted his weight. That unit doesn't lose people. It erases them. Ava leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. Then you have your answer. The first agent sighed softly. You broke hospital protocol. Yes. You treated government property without authorization. Yes. And you revealed yourself. Ava's eyes hardened. I revealed nothing. Another pause. Then the agent slid a tablet across the table. On the screen was footage from the ER. Grainy zoomed in. Ava's hands on the dog's shoulder. The dog going still trusting. You didn't hesitate. The agent said, that's what concerns us. Ava pushed the tablet back. That's what saved him. The agent stood. We are not here to arrest you yet, Ava replied. Yet, he agreed. We are here to assess risk. She laughed once quietly. You're about 10 years late. They left without another word. Outside, Hale was waiting. You okay? Ava nodded. They'll keep watching. They always do. A nurse hurried down the hall. The dog, she said breathlessly. He's walking better already. Ava felt a weight lift from her chest she hadn't realized was there. She turned toward the treatment room and stopped. The old man was standing, not fully upright, braced, but standing. Two orderlies hovered nearby, stunned. He said he wanted to try, one whispered. Didn't ask permission. The veteran caught Ava's eye. Been a long time, he said. But worth it, she swallowed. You didn't have to, he smiled. Neither did you. Hale stepped beside her. Media's outside, he murmured. Someone leaked something. Ava closed her eyes briefly. Of course they did. Through the glass doors, cameras flashed.